us back after our breaks in summer and fall. This is our inaugural session for fall. A couple of announcements. We've established our mini-series themes for this fall for the speaker series. We're having a number of talks that focus on higher education, whether the California Master Plan still applies, how we can increase access for underserved populations to higher ed, and other relevant topics. The second theme is states as laboratories for innovation, with a focus on ways in which California has been ahead of the curve, and also some ways in which California can learn from other states. And then finally, health and healthcare, which is a topic that's perennially in the news. So, one other thing. For those of you here today, you may have a particular interest in a special event that we're holding on October 19th, which is a special panel on the problem of homelessness in California, causes and solutions. This will be moderated by State Senator Jim Bell, and will include sociological, medical, and housing policy perspectives from a variety of noted scholars and policy personalities. So, with that, it's a great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Kenneth Wells. Dr. Wells is a professor of psychiatry at UCLA School of Medicine, the Semel Institute. He also directs the Semel Institute's Center for Health Services Research in mental health. Ken's focus is really on what we might call community psychiatry. And I remember many years ago I took a college course in mental health and public policy. The salient example of community psychiatry at the time was a kind of a unique experiment in which a psychiatrist turned his attention from the treatment of individual patients on what was then the psychotherapeutic couch, and started putting thiamine in the alcoholic beverages of a underserved Skid Row community of alcoholics, essentially, and in that way preventing on a population level a severe vitamin deficiency syndrome often seen in this population. So it was a way of treating the individual by treating the community. And that idea is really what has driven Dr. Wells' work. He's a luminary in the field of community psychiatry, the interface between medicine or the psychiatric specialty within medicine and public health. He's the author of innumerable publications. He's received many awards, which you can read about on the handout. He's an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine. He's been the mentor to many, many, many young scholars over the years, myself included, no longer young, but was once, I think. And in addition to all of that, he has written 2 operas and is working on several more. One concerning Eleanor Roosevelt and her times and challenges, and another dealing with a young woman, based on a true story of a young woman who developed schizophrenia while in university, and her life course and story. Man of many talents, and we're really very pleased to have you here today to talk with us about community engagement, planning to address depression, and approach to health equity.
Thanks, and thanks for showing up as the quarter starts. And it is a pleasure to be here. I will be speaking today on behalf of a large group of academic and community partners, both in Los Angeles and New Orleans, who've been really working over the last decade or so on what does it mean to bring whole communities forward, especially the resource communities or those stressed by disasters and other circumstances, around mental health, behavioral health issues. How can we be communities together? So I'm speak on behalf of the community partners in your council, that's what we call ourselves. Yes. So no financial conflicts of interest, unfortunately. So in 1948, which was the year I was born, the World Health Organization came out with this definition of mental health, and that has kind of haunted my life. It's kind of become my mission to fill that. Mental health is not just the absence of mental disorder, but a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her, it should be a her, own potential, and cope with the normal stresses of life, and work productively and fruitfully in his or his community. Yes. Oh. Right. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. This, of course, goes beyond mental disorder to really kind of all of them, and how do we have mental fullness in our lives? This is an animated slide of my partners, more talented at putting slides together than I am. And it's really to demonstrate what do we mean by equity and health equity. And the idea here is that some people need more of a boost than others, given their life circumstances, what their characteristics are, in order to achieve a similar end. And equality would be on the left, having the same boost, and equity is on the right, having enough boost that everyone has the same chance of getting the apple off the tree. And that's the framework that we have followed to try to think of what does it mean to get help for a condition like depression, or to have a chance of having mental wellness. And if you're in communities without the same opportunities or with more stresses or challenges to overcome, maybe you need more help for the same outcome chance. So before I was doing this community work, I was doing what we call traditional health care services and policy research, and particularly focused on how do you improve quality of care for depression. Depression, some of you may know, is about as common. It's just under hypertension as one of the most common either presenting symptoms or symptoms not presented, because not spoken about at a doctor's office. And it's been estimated by the World Health Organization to be the leading cause of morbidity in the world. And that's because, I'm not going to say heart disease, which typically is clustered in the older population. Depression covers the full age range and can affect you in childhood, adolescence, regular adulthood, and and it has about the same effect on functioning as any other major chronic illness. So we put together its effect on functioning and its age distribution. It's also roughly similarly prevalent across most populations, most racial and ethnic groups. It's a little bit less common in African Americans, but the severity of depression and the impact tends to be higher. So the impact of depression as a health condition is roughly similar across most populations. So this effort, Partners in Care, started with primary care patients with depression. About half of primary care patients, excuse me, here's the wall, putting down my so about half of primary care patients are not known to be by their primary care doctor. That discovery work has not been done. And And that's especially true of racial and ethnic minority or lower income groups, that they're less likely to be identified as having depression. So we did this study across the country. What happens when you support primary care practices that kind of have the resources that they need and the training to give evidence-based care, then you happen to pick up patients as they walk through the door and follow them. It's not like they have to get care from a doctor, but you're just kicking into what happens. And we did that in such a way to oversample areas that had Latino and African Americans. So we particularly look at what happened to whites, Latinos, African Americans. And so the QI programs were practices that had support for evidence-based care for depression. The usual care had just written guidelines that were mailed to their medical directors. And you can see that, and this is the percent recovered in 5 years. So people were in their primary care practice, flash forward 5 years later, that practice had special training or they didn't. They probably weren't even in the same practice 5 years later, right? So what happened is you were African American, you walked through the door of that clinic that had training what to do. You had this large overcoming of what would have happened through your normal primary care work in terms of recovered from your depression. If you were Latino, you made up about half of the disparity of unusual care and having a practice. And if you were white, you did a little better, but you basically had a good chance of being recovered if you were white either way, because most of the places you go would be offering you, would have the resources to offer you. So that is, and then the question became, all right, so if you can do that much better, well, can we get that done in the world? That's sort of the policy question. How do you either re-engineer practice or change policy or get communities to demand better care? What are the approaches to get high-quality depression care into communities of color? And the SAMHSA, the Substance Use and Mental Health Services Administration, federal agency, did a big review in this area, and just 5 years ago concluded there's nothing really known about what the added value of community services are over traditional mental health services to make a difference. So to figure out how to take this step, I apprenticed myself to Loretta Jones, who's the CEO of Healthy African American Families in South Los Angeles. And she has a model of community engagement that I studied with her for about 5 years before we did our big effort and worked in the community to figure out how do you really engage in understanding depression services and moving forward together. And these are the key principles of her model. Transparency, making sure that you're very clear about what your goals are and are not. Respect. Power sharing, so that she and I had equal authority, others at the table had equal authority. Co-leadership of every aspect of the project with the community, and what we call two-way knowledge exchange. So it's not just about me talking to you. It's about you, with your expertise in the community, telling me what's needed or what works. That's two-way knowledge exchange. The other another key aspect of the model that they follow is, okay, so there are partners at the center. So let's say that this is the policymakers, the thinkers, the community leaders wanting to work on this problem. You need to pull on who you need. So you need someone for transportation or homelessness or whatever. You call on them. They're the resident experts. But you answer to the community. It's not the funder. It's not policy. It's not the outside. It's the community. So that means no plan goes forward without vetting in front of large community audiences. This is what we're thinking. Have we got it right? Is this going to meet the needs of the community? And that's how the planning, the work, and the sharing of the findings is done. The other way that this is done, just to give you some sense of how this sort of work is approached, you have the council, I mentioned that, the community forums for broad input, and then working groups that develop things like interventions or policy strategies and so forth. And things proceed. Loretta over here, she would say, hold up your hand, and you see in front of you these V's. Vision, that's the planning process with the idea, the valley, the work to get it done, and the victory. And that's getting the work done, finding out what you found, using that, which leads to value. That's the big deal here. She would say, if I do all the planning and you do none of the planning, that's bad for me and bad for you. And if you do all the work and I don't do any of the work, what's the win for me? You know, so it's really that the advantage of the V is it's really taking both sides. It's taking the policy or healthcare academic side, the community side, the patient side. And that work began in a project at apprentice phase. Witness for Wellness is what the community decided to call addressing depression, trying to go to that idea that we started with in the WHO. Here are the principles. This is what the community decided to call doing research, looking and listening, recording, and sharing, which I really like. I mean, it's really making it very transparent. And the three working groups we had were, how do you get to talk about depression where there's very high stigma? How do you build services quality? And how do you get the policy support to move forward? And I just want to quickly give you an idea of that work.
And this one is called Depression. Hissing silence curls in my brain, squeezes my eyes open. Nights are not friendly. They are too long. Days are no better. The big sky has shrunk around my head, pushed the walls in. I am too tired to resist. The musty visitor slips under my door. My incense burns, no match. He moves relentlessly through the loose weave of my dream catcher and catches me before I sleep.
This is from a spoken word event in the community where people stood up or had prepared a poem in this case, or spontaneously did poem or rap, and also people did comedy, sketches, and so forth around the issue of depression, stress, coping, wellness, in order to increase the community mindfulness and dialogue. And there would be discussions that these events would prompt. That's just an example of what one of the work groups decided was needed to increase the ability of the community to really talk about the issues. While this was going on, Katrina struck New Orleans, and we worked with one of the fellows in the same program that Rich and I trained in, who was from New Orleans, to take this model, this community engagement model, and to use it, which became the American Red Cross's mental health recovery approach after Katrina, to support mental health recovery over a 5-period of time. And with all of the news coverage of Harvey and so forth, this kind of picture is not a sort of a shock today, but it was when I was walking around and visiting and exploring what to do. This picture is an example of what the community ended up doing with our evidence-based models of depression care. So the gentleman on the left, who was still working, who also playing guitar and had his friends and so forth, had completely stopped interacting with people, was alone. The caseworker who shaking his hand came to his house after he was trained by us, and said, can I talk to you and share with you? I want to talk to you about stress, depression. I said, oh, that's me. She said, can I show you a little video on your TV? So they had a video, and well, maybe I have a problem. And she said, well, and then she used a behavioral technique called behavioral activation. And that's getting people to do something pleasurable again. And he said, well, I'll get off the bus at block early tomorrow. And she said, well, give me a call and tell me how it is to walk that block home. So he called her and he said, I feel a little better. Maybe tomorrow I'll get off 3 blocks. So 3 stops over. So he got off and he ran into someone he hadn't seen since high school. And they had coffee together, and then they went to a movie the following week. She went to visit him 3 weeks later, and after that, she came back to the training, and she said, I said, what do you mean? She said, he never went to see the doctor. And I said, well, how's he doing? He's doing fine. He's playing the guitar. He's singing his friend. You did your job. There are no doctors, right? I mean, you're doing that. So that's her coming back with the Neighborhood Health Association director, who was on TV talking about this with Brad Pitt, who supported some of the recovery efforts, and one of the senior trainers. So that became, we then continued that model in what's called Community Partners in Care, or CPIC, which I will, in the interest of time, go through pretty quickly. And again, this is the community's portrayal of what this study is. It's kind of a complicated idea. So we went through a process of identifying where in the community might people with depression try to get help. So what are some thoughts about what you see up here? Where would you talk to someone if you were depressed? Or where would a family maybe talk to a family member? Faith-based, in other words, who would you share your problem with? Maybe a doctor, maybe not, right? So we went through that process, and these were examples of agencies that people mentioned. Others were senior centers. Others were barbershops and hair salons and so forth. This was a formal community process. So we recruited all of those. We actually recruited 95 programs of different kinds. And they either were supported agency by agency, called Resources for Services, or brought together in a collaborative as a community. And I'm asked to share who can help whom. They had to work on memoranda of understanding, because could they share clients? Could they talk to each other about a client? Did they need client permission? Could they have some kind of sharing agreement? So that's all the policy work, or some of the policy work that was needed. And what they started with was, this is sort of the classic evidence-based depression program: team management, clinical assessment and medication, cognitive behavioral therapy, care management, case management from our New Orleans work, and patient education resources. And they all had that available, all had training in that. What would they do with that? So this is from the very first engagement conference for the group that was in Bring Everyone Together, Let's Engage.
So the moral of the story is, we all came together around a pot of depression, right? We came around a pot of depression, and we all have something to give. We all have something to contribute to the pot to address depression.
Does anybody have some screening that they can put into the pot?
Could you come up here and put it in the pot so you can have some screening tonight?
Come bring it on down, Reverend Stone. Woo! And I believe there's a little bit of patient education out there. Let's get our patients educated. Woo! Starting to smell good, huh? All right, and I think we have some case managers out there. Let's get some case management up here into the pot.
That's right.
I'm starting to drool a little. And I believe we have some outreach. Do we have some outreach workers out there? Woo. We need those, right? And I want the audience to shout out, what are some things that in your agency you can contribute? Cultural sensitivity, patience, positivity, we heard positivity, empathy, commitment, authenticity. That will complete our pot. And everyone...
What's the ingredient, Pastor?
Love. And if you can hold fast to this idea that each of you have something special and distinct to add to a pot that our community needs very dearly. And only you can put it in there. See, the researchers can't do it. We can't do it by ourselves. The preachers can't do it. Our community is suffering from depression. And we all need to be a part of the solution. So I beg of you to stay involved, get involved, be committed, so we can have a healthy stone soup. Thank you.
So this is taking the idea of what are all these elements that people are going to be trained in or need to be trained in, and translating it into something that both people can understand and can increase commitment, and also adding in other community ideas. I mean, how many meetings have we been in where someone mentions the word love? It's something that would really help us to move forward with something. And that's, to me, that's always a very powerful moment when that minister who became one of the leaders of the project around the whole issue of how you bring humanitarian values forward. So what did this kind of approach add? That was what really brought these agencies to want to do this work, which was a lot to do over and above their usual time, go through trainings, have conferences, decide how to change their agreements, all of that. That's a lot of work. And even in the control condition, people are also going through trainings just individually, not together, right? So, but it's because they say, we have coalitions all the time, but we don't have any data, and so policymakers never know what to do with this. Do you support it? Is there value to this? So what we found, first of all, was the kind of approach that you just saw was much more engaging, brought more providers and staff to the table. And when you say providers or staff, that means not only the doctor, but the hairdresser and the frontline staff. Because the community felt that everyone needs to be on the page of understanding what this is about. Otherwise, there's too many places to escape. You get treated rudely at the front desk. If someone doesn't understand what to address the prospective person, it's all over. And then we followed people who just happened to be walking through the door of these 95 agencies. May or may not have actually got identified, but and dealt with the depression that they were in the environment. And what we found is those who were in the collaboration arm, the coalition arm, had improved mental health quality of life by a standard measure, actually the most commonly used quality of life measure in the world, the SF-12, and also increased in physical activity. Why? Because we had senior center exercise and exercise clubs curves as part of this study, so that people in the coalition would say, the press right down the street is that exercise, right? Reducing homelessness risk. So that was either you were less likely to be homeless, or to be evicted from your place of residence, or to have a major financial crisis. And so there was a very large reduction in homelessness or homelessness risk.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we got it now? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. And then also is a 50% reduction in the chance of being hospitalized for a behavioral health problem in the following 6 months. And that got the healthcare providers attention. When you see that there's it's very hard to get something like a 50% reduction in that. So this, again, is the community's version of telling the story of the findings. Depression is real.
And is the leading cause of disability in adults.
It affects a person's productivity, their family life, and their communities.
It affects how you work,
How you love.
and how you live. But there is hope.
With education and quality care,
Depression is treatable.
Quality care for depression improves not only the symptoms,
it heals family dysfunction, lessens homelessness, and helps a person find employment.
But there are barriers to getting high-quality care,
especially in minority and under-resourced communities.
Because depression has a stigma.
People who have it and are treated think that others will see them as crazy.
And this makes it difficult to seek help.
So, how do we break stigma?
And bring quality care to the community.
by working with the organizations in these communities who have already earned the trust of depressed clients.
and that's just what we did.
UCLA and RAND began with Healthy African American Families, Queens Care Health and Faith Partnership, and Behavioral Health Services.
Engaging their communities of South Los Angeles and Hollywood.
They recruited agencies from churches to senior centers to health advocacy organizations.
To primary care and mental health clinics.
Uniting with Parks and Recreation, substance abuse, social services, and homeless agencies.
Even barbershops, beauty salons, and fitness clubs.
95 agencies to be exact.
Together, we became Community Partners in Care, CPIC.
So, how did we do it?
By creating training and programs together.
To think of depression as a community problem.
Rather than a primary care problem.
Guiding over 500 providers through more than 100 conferences and trainings.
People really grew together.
And the results were amazing.
Mental well-being and physical activities in these communities improve.
Visits to faith-based settings increase.
The risk factors and numbers in homelessness decrease.
We reimagined depression care by providing services through the local organization, improving lives.
Bringing families and communities together.
Depression is treatable.
And the stigma can be overcome.
We're building a community from the community.
I'm in the community.
I'm in the
I'm in the
community.
community.
I'm
in the community.
I'm in the
I'm
community.
in the community.
I'm in the community.
I'm in the community.
I'm in the community.
We are community.
Community Partners in Care.
CPIC.
Join us in beating depression.
So the community's way of telling the story is much better than my way of telling the story. This is to give you some sense of the numbers. So you've got that improvement in physical health and the reduction in the 10% reduction in either being homeless or at high risk for chronic homelessness. This is that big percentage reduction in hospitalizations. And then we also followed people at a year, and there was more improvement in mental health related quality of life, continued reduction in hospitalizations. And then we've just published the 3-year outcomes. We actually were funded by to follow people over 3 years. There was then some improvement in physical health, still less hospitalizations, still greater faith-based use, higher use of mood stabilizers, and so forth. And on the getting back to some of the policy issues, so what a bit surprised me, because so often you do some kind of big study like this, and maybe 10 years later this is an impact on policy. But starting with LA County, which is where the study was taking place, they were at the table, the leaders of the county agencies, while this project was going on. This was no secret to them. So actually, before the studies came out, they proposed to have a coalition, what was called the Health Neighborhood Initiative, to coordinate behavioral health and address social determinants of health in 12 neighborhoods. Now, they're not doing exactly what we did around evidence-based depression care, but they took this broad idea and translated it into policy that they needed across the health agencies. Thrive New York City contacted us. That's a big effort to do something similar in New York City, and they said, you're the only evidence for something you're trying to do to help us. And now they're working with us to implement it in their major healthcare systems. When Baton Rouge was flooded a year ago, and 100,000 homes were damaged, we were then asked to come in with this model, and the post-Katrina work to support that, which we're now doing. And the National Academy of Sciences recently funded us to extend that work throughout southern Louisiana because of the very high risk in another major study. But this kind of work also directly builds capacity while doing it, which is part of what is important to the community and to us. Over 150 trainings in the community. Community leaders were trained, dollar matching for community grants, so communities could use these findings to apply for a foundation grant or a DIS grant to build their services, the toolkits and resources and so forth. And you get a bit of a sense of hope, I think, from the video that the community developed. I wanted to say, in sort of closing, to open it up to the audience, some of the implications for population health. I really think this study is about combining evidence-based practices and community engagement for population health. I think that could be a very important direction. One question is, can this model actually be adapted to the broader community behavioral health movement that California is piloting? What modifications are needed for the opioid crisis, other addiction? This could be a model with implications where there's shame, stigma, huge problem, and lots of players needed to make a difference. But as with the initiative, there are lots of policy implications for how do you get people to share resources, how do you get the leadership authority for the community. If the ministers are going to do counseling, for example, they may do a lot of that out of their heart because they have some salary from the church. But if they're actually helping healthcare, should there be some kind of pool of funds that comes from healthcare to the to the faith-based organizations that are providing counseling? Those the policy issues are at the heart of what would be needed to sustain programs like this. And this is just some of our leaders, most of whom you saw on the film, not all of them, funding at the bottom, and some of the awards that the entire group of 120 leaders are partners. And you are our key to the future, whether you're a community member, patient, student, policymaker, person in the community, provider. You have a lot of power to help people. So maybe there's some message for you from some